Commander Zephyros adjusted his unnecessarily ornate uniform and straightened his four shoulders with the kind of confidence that only comes from never having been wrong about anything important. Well, technically he had been wrong about the whole "Pluto is definitely inhabited by warrior poets" incident, but that hardly counted since nobody talks about Pluto anymore anyway. "Attention! Earth Observation Division," he announced to his skeleton crew of 2, because apparently cataloging an entire planet civilization was considered low priority by the Galactic Council's Budget Committee. "Today marks a momentous occasion in xenological research." Dr. Quill, a nervous creature who looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with an anxiety disorder, twitched at his workstation. "Sir, we've been monitoring Earth's radio transmissions for 3 cycles now. The humans seem to spend most of their time discussing something called student loan debt and arguing about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. I'm not sure how momentous—" "Nonsense, Quill." Zephyros waved all 4 of his arms dismissively. "Today we dive deeper than mere radio chatter. Today we access their visual archives, their historical documents, their cultural treasures." General Ironbark, whose species had evolved from something resembling a disgruntled tree stump, grunted from his corner. As military advisor, his job was primarily to point out why everything was a terrible idea, and he took that responsibility seriously. "Commander, perhaps we should stick to the standard observation protocols. The last time someone on this council got creative with alien research, we ended up classifying a species of sentient clouds as a moderate breakfast threat." Zephyros ignored him, as was tradition. His tentacles danced across the control panel with the enthusiasm of someone about to make a discovery that would definitely get him promoted to a better office with actual windows instead of that depressing view of the asteroid parking lot. "Behold," he proclaimed as the main screen flickered to life. "I have successfully infiltrated their global information network. Observe the vast digital libraries of human knowledge and experience." The screen displayed what appeared to be a catalog of something called Netflix. Thousands upon thousands of titles scrolled past, organized into helpful categories like Trending Now and Because You Watched. Dr. Quill leaned forward, his compound eyes whirring as they focused. "Sir, there seems to be an extensive collection labeled Horror. Perhaps these are historical accounts of their planet's natural disasters?" "Excellent deduction, Quill," Zephyros beamed, showing entirely too many teeth. "And look here, an entire section dedicated to thrillers and supernatural, clearly documentation of their ongoing struggles with paranormal phenomena and high-stress survival situations." General Ironbark's bark-like skin creaked ominously. "Commander, shouldn't we perhaps start with something less intense? Maybe their educational programming? Something called Sesame Street appears frequently in their children's databases." "Absolutely not, General. If we're going to understand humanity, we must study their greatest challenges and their responses to existential threats. These horror archives are obviously their most important historical documents." Zephyros selected a title at random. "Ah, here we have The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, undoubtedly a detailed account of their industrial agricultural practices and the brave individuals who operate heavy machinery in dangerous conditions." Dr. Quill's nervous twitching intensified. "Sir, the description mentions terrifying and blood-soaked quite prominently." "Precisely. This confirms our hypothesis that Earth is a challenging environment requiring exceptional survival skills. Commence recording, gentlemen. We are about to witness the true nature of humanity's daily existence." And with that, Commander Zephyros pressed play on what would become the most catastrophic cultural misunderstanding in galactic history. 17 minutes into The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Dr. Quill had turned a disturbing shade of green and was frantically scribbling notes with all 6 of his hands simultaneously. General Ironbark had retreated so far into his corner that he was practically part of the wall, and Commander Zephyros was staring at the screen with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for watching someone try to parallel park a space cruiser. "By the 7 moons of Craxlon," Quill whispered, his voice barely audible above the sound effects. "Commander, the humans appear to be using primitive cutting implements as recreational tools, and that screaming. Is that their mating call?" No, Quill. Clearly this is a documentary about their lumber industry," Zephyros replied, though his usual confidence had developed a slight tremor. "Notice how efficiently that individual operates the chainsaw. Remarkable dexterity for a bipedal species." General Ironbark's leaves rustled nervously. "Commander, I've seen military training videos with less violence. That human just ran through a forest for 20 minutes straight without stopping. Their endurance capabilities are unsettling." "Excellent observation. Make note of that, Quill. Humans possess supernatural stamina and can maintain peak physical performance under extreme stress. Zephyros paused the screen on a particularly unflattering close-up of Leatherface. And look at their adaptive camouflage techniques. This individual has fashioned protective facial coverings from local materials. Dr. Quill's compound eyes swiveled independently, a sure sign he was having a nervous breakdown. Sir, I don't think those are protective coverings. I think those are the facial features of other— Moving on, Zephyros interrupted quickly, selecting the next title. Ah, here's something called Night of the Living Dead, probably a cultural celebration or harvest festival. 2 hours later, the observation beck looked like the aftermath of a psychological warfare experiment. Dr. Quill had filled 17 data pads with increasingly frantic notes that mostly consisted of phrases like, "They don't die," and "Why are they eating each other?" scrawled in progressively more erratic handwriting. "Commander," Quill said, his voice cracking, "I need to update my previous assessment. The humans don't just survive in hostile environments. They continue functioning even after biological termination. They've achieved some form of post-mortem combat effectiveness." "Fascinating," Zephyros exclaimed, though he'd been quietly reaching for the pause button every few minutes. "Their medical technology must be extraordinary. Notice how quickly they recover from catastrophic injuries." General Ironbark had given up pretending this was normal. "Commander, that's not medical technology. That's reanimated corpses with an inexplicable hunger for brain tissue. And somehow the living humans are managing to outfight them using household objects and garden tools." "Precisely. This demonstrates their remarkable adaptability and resource management skills. When faced with a plague of undead adversaries, they improvise weapons from common domestic items." Zephyros switched to another title. "Let's see what else we can learn. The Exorcist sounds educational." By the time the head-spinning scene arrived, Dr. Quill had fainted 3 times, and General Ironbark was seriously considering early retirement. Commander Zephyros, however, had entered what could only be described as academic hyper-focus mode. "Remarkable. Not only do humans coexist with supernatural entities, but they've developed specialized containment protocols. That elderly human is performing what appears to be advanced psychic warfare, using only primitive ritual tools and sheer force of will." "Commander," General Ironbark managed weakly, "I think we should perhaps take a break and—" "Nonsense. We're making groundbreaking discoveries about human capabilities. Cue up that one called Alien. It's probably their historical account of first contact protocols." And so, with the naive enthusiasm of a species that had never invented horror entertainment for fun, the 3 aliens settled in to learn about humanity's documented experiences with extraterrestrial encounters. What could possibly go wrong? Word travels fast in a space station the size of a shopping mall, especially when someone starts screaming about humans being unkillable death machines who treat dismemberment as a minor inconvenience. By the time Alien had reached the chest-bursting scene, half the observation deck was packed with curious onlookers who had come to see what all the fuss was about. Commander Zephyros, now pale green and sporting what could generously be called a 1,000-yard stare, was still attempting to maintain his scholarly composure. "As you can see, colleagues, when faced with a hostile extraterrestrial organism, humans demonstrate remarkable tactical ingenuity. Notice how the female survivor improvises weapons from industrial equipment." Ambassador Thornwick, a dignified mollusk-like creature from the diplomatic corps, had arrived just in time to watch Ripley torch the alien queen with a flamethrower. His tentacles went rigid with shock. "Commander, are you telling me that when humans encounter unknown alien species, their first instinct is to incinerate them?" "Not just incinerate, Ambassador," Dr. Quill interjected, consulting his increasingly frantic notes. "According to my observations, they also favor explosive decompression, acidic dissolution, and something called spacing, which involves ejecting threats into the vacuum of space while making intimidating verbal declarations." Captain Mossbark from security had joined the growing crowd and was watching with the expression of someone slowly realizing their chosen career path might have been a mistake. "That human female just told a highly advanced alien predator to, quote, 'Get away from her, you bitch,' before destroying it with military-grade weaponry. That's not survival instinct, that's psychological warfare." "Exactly," Zephyros exclaimed, apparently missing the point entirely. "Humans combined physical violence with sophisticated intimidation tactics. They've weaponized rudeness." The crowd murmured nervously as Zephyros queued up the next selection. "Now, let's examine their response to supernatural threats. This documentary is called The Conjuring and appears to detail their standard protocols for dealing with paranormal invasions. 20 minutes later, the observation deck resembled a support group for shell-shocked veterans. Engineer Pipkin, whose species had never encountered anything more dangerous than mildly aggressive space algae, was rocking back and forth, muttering something about holy water and power of compels you. Ambassador Thornwick had retreated inside his shell entirely and was making distressed squeaking sounds. "Commander," Captain Mossbark said slowly, "that human family didn't evacuate when their house became possessed by demonic entities. They stayed, they fought back, with prayers and wooden crosses." "Remarkable resilience," Zephyros agreed enthusiastically, and noticed their tactical coordination. The adult humans protected the juveniles while maintaining offensive capabilities against incorporeal threats. Dr. Quill looked up from his notes, his compound eyes spinning wildly. "Sir, I've been analyzing the data patterns. According to these documentaries, humans regularly survive encounters with zombies, demons, psychotic killers, alien invaders, supernatural entities, mutant animals, and something called teenagers. Their casualty rates are far lower than any species should reasonably achieve. Plus," added Captain Mossbar grimly, "they seem to actively seek out these encounters. Look at this next title, Friday the 13th. The description suggests humans voluntarily travel to remote locations known to be inhabited by serial killers, apparently for recreational purposes." The crowd collectively shuddered as they watched teenagers deliberately split up in a dark forest while being hunted by an unstoppable masked murderer. By the end of the film, Chief Science Officer Willowbranch had started taking detailed notes on human hunting patterns. "Fascinating," Willowbranch murmured. "They use themselves as bait to draw out threats, then engage in single combat using improvised weapons. That final survivor eliminated the threat using nothing but a machete and what appears to be pure spite. Don't forget their regenerative capabilities," Dr. Quill added nervously. "According to these historical records, humans can survive multiple sequels worth of trauma. Some threats require up to 8 separate encounters before permanent neutralization." Ambassador Thornwick finally emerged from his shell, looking deeply disturbed. "Commander, I think we need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. If these are representative samples of human conflict resolution, then Earth isn't just a dangerous planet, it's a training ground for the most terrifying species in the galaxy." Zephyros nodded gravely, having completely abandoned any pretense that this was routine research. "Agreed. But first we must complete our survey. I found something called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and several documentaries about humans who apparently transform into wolves during lunar cycles. We need to understand the full scope of their capabilities." General Ironbark, who had been silent for the past hour, finally spoke up from his corner. His voice was hollow, defeated. "Commander, I've served in 3 galactic conflicts and seen civilizations rise and fall, but I've never encountered a species that treats mortal peril as entertainment. These humans don't just survive impossible odds, they seem to enjoy it. Precisely why we must study them," Zephyros declared. "If we're going to make first contact with humanity, we need to understand their culture, their methods, their recreational violence." And with that ominous declaration, he pressed play on The Shining, blissfully unaware that he was about to learn why humans had coined the phrase, cabin fever. The growing crowd of aliens settled in with grim determination to document exactly what kind of nightmare species they were dealing with. After all, knowledge was power, and they were going to need all the power they could get. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council hadn't seen this level of panic since the great asteroid shortage of 2847, when half the galaxy thought they were going to run out of things to mine. Representatives from 47 different species packed the amphitheater, their various appendages fidgeting nervously as they waited for Commander Zephyros to present his findings. High Chancellor Verdania, whose species resembled a cross between a butterfly and a very disappointed librarian, called the session to order with considerably less pomp than usual. "Commander Zephyros, you've requested this emergency assembly to discuss the classification of the planet Earth. The floor is yours, though I sincerely hope this is more substantial than your last presentation about aggressive space flowers." Zephyros stood at the central podium, his forearms spread dramatically, looking like someone who had stared into the abyss and found it staring back with a chainsaw. "Honored representatives, what I am about to show you will forever change our understanding of what constitutes a threat to galactic civilization." The massive holographic display flickered to life, showing the title card for Halloween, A collective intake of breath echoed through the hall as the assembled aliens recognized the now infamous horror archives that had been circulating through diplomatic channels for weeks. "This is Michael Myers," Zephyros announced as the masked figure appeared on screen. "According to human historical records, this individual demonstrates several abilities that defy conventional understanding of biological limitations. Observe his persistence." The screen showed Myers surviving everything from gunshots to falls that should have been fatal, continuing his relentless pursuit of victims with mechanical determination. Ambassador Thornwick, now serving as expert witness, raised a trembling tentacle. "High Chancellor, we've documented 47 separate incidents where this single human terminated multiple targets while sustaining what should have been mortal injuries. He demonstrates supernatural resilience, tactical patience, and an apparent immunity to conventional weapons." Senator Grimsley from the Military Oversight Committee leaned forward, her crystalline features reflecting the screen's glow ominously. "Commander, are you suggesting this represents typical human combat capability?" "Not typical, Senator. Exceptional. But the truly disturbing part is how other humans respond to such threats." Zephyros switched to a montage of final girls fighting back. When confronted with seemingly unstoppable adversaries, humans don't flee or surrender. They improvise weapons, exploit environmental advantages, and engage in psychological warfare that often proves effective. The screen showed Laurie Strode stabbing Myers with a knitting needle, Nancy Thompson booby-trapping her house to catch Freddy Krueger, and Sidney Prescott turning the tables on Ghostface with nothing but teenage attitude and household objects. Dr. Quill stepped forward, his nervous twitching now a permanent feature. "Honored representatives, we've identified recurring patterns in human survival documentation. They possess an innate ability to weaponize their environment, maintain cognitive function under extreme stress, and somehow predict the tactical movements of superior opponents." "Show them the space documentation," General Ironbark rumbled from his position near the wall, where he'd taken root for moral support. The display switched to scenes from Aliens, showing Ripley and the power loader facing off against the Queen. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as a single human in improvised mechanical armor engaged a creature that had decimated an entire military unit. "As you can observe," Zephyros continued, "when faced with hostile extraterrestrial forces, humans demonstrate remarkable adaptability. This individual, identified as Ellen Ripley, single-handedly eliminated an entire alien infestation using creative applications of industrial equipment and what can only be described as maternal protective instincts weaponized to terrifying effect." Chairman Blobsworth of the Trade Federation, whose species communicated primarily through color changes, had turned a deeply concerning shade of purple. "Commander, are you telling us that human females become more dangerous when protecting offspring?" "Significantly more dangerous, Chairman. We've documented cases where human parents have eliminated threats that professional military units couldn't handle. They appear to possess a psychological state called Mama Bear mode that temporarily grants them superhuman capabilities." The display switched to a compilation of what the aliens had categorized as human tactical adaptations. McReady flamethrowing the Thing, Ash using a chainsaw against deadites, and various survivors turning everyday objects into implements of destruction. "Furthermore," Dr. Quill added, consulting his increasingly thick files, "humans have developed recreational activities that serve as training for these encounters. They attend events called haunted houses, where they voluntarily experience simulated versions of these threats, apparently to improve their fear response and tactical thinking under pressure." Senator Grimsley's crystalline form had begun emitting a low, worried humming sound. "You're suggesting that humans train for combat against supernatural and extraterrestrial threats as a form of entertainment?" "Precisely. They've created an entire industry around exposure to terrifying scenarios. They gather in groups to watch these historical documentaries, often while consuming substances that impair their cognitive function. Yet they still manage to predict threat behaviors and critique tactical decisions made by the subjects." Ambassador Fluffington from the Peaceful Meadow Systems, whose species had never experienced violence more severe than a strongly worded complaint, stood on shaking legs. "High Chancellor, if these humans are capable of eliminating supernatural entities and hostile aliens using improvised weapons, what does that suggest about their potential response to first contact?" The hall fell silent except for the nervous rustling of various alien appendages. High Chancellor Vidania's wings fluttered anxiously as she considered the implications. "Commander Zephyros," she said slowly, "in your professional opinion, what classification should we assign to Earth?" Zephyros straightened to his full height, his expression grave. High Chancellor, based on our extensive research into human capabilities and their documented responses to threats, I recommend immediate classification of Earth as a Class X death world, with a mandatory exclusion zone of no less than 50 light-years. The vote was unanimous. Not a single representative dissented, abstained, or even asked for a bathroom break first. Furthermore, Zephyros continued, I recommend that any species that accidentally encounters humans should immediately surrender and hope for merciful treatment. Based on their documented history, resistance is not only futile, but likely to result in creative forms of elimination, involving whatever happens to be lying around. And so, with the solemn gravity of a species that had just realized they were sharing the galaxy with apex predators who considered mortal peril a form of recreational activity, the Galactic Council voted to quarantine humanity before humanity even knew they existed. The motion carried 847 votes to 0, with 12 abstentions from representatives who had fainted during the presentation. Meanwhile, approximately 52 light-years away on the recently classified Class X death world, a species of terrifying apex predators was going about their daily business of being absolutely, completely, utterly normal. Jessica Martinez was having what she considered a perfectly ordinary Tuesday, which would have sent the entire Galactic Council into collective cardiac arrest if they'd known about it. She'd started her morning by watching a compilation of top 10 horror movie deaths while eating cereal, rating each demise on creativity and special effects quality. To the aliens monitoring Earth's communications, this would have appeared to be a tactical briefing on elimination techniques, delivered over breakfast with casual commentary. "Oh, come on," Jessica muttered at her laptop screen, spooning another bite of Lucky Charms. The head-spinning thing in The Exorcist is so obviously fake. If you're going to document demonic possession, at least make it believable. 3 sectors away, Dr. Quill was updating his files with intercepted human communications that confirmed their species' casual attitude towards supernatural threats and their sophisticated understanding of demonic manifestation patterns. At Riverside Community College, Professor Williams was teaching his horror in cinema class, completely unaware that his curriculum was being interpreted as advanced military strategy by a species of nervous insectoids. Now, as we can see from Ripley's Tactics in Aliens, the effective response to overwhelming force is strategic use of environmental advantages, he explained to his bored sophomore students, who were mostly there for an easy elective credit. She uses the industrial loading equipment as both protection and a force multiplier, demonstrating how humans adapt available technology for combat applications when facing superior opposition. Student Emma Thompson raised her hand. "Professor, isn't she just using the power loader because it makes for a cool final boss fight?" Excellent point, Emma. The filmmakers understood that audiences would find the David versus Goliath scenario compelling because it represents the human capacity for creative problem-solving under pressure. If the Galactic Council's Intelligence Division had been monitoring this conversation, they would have filed it under human military training disguised as educational programming, and probably increased Earth's threat level to Class XX+. Over at the Westfield Shopping Mall, the Halloween Horror Nights Planning Committee was having their monthly meeting in the food court, discussing their upcoming attraction lineup. Mall security guard Frank Patterson was explaining his concept for a new haunted house experience. "So, picture this," Frank said, gesturing enthusiastically with a half-eaten pretzel. "We theme it around alien invasion, right? Visitors have to navigate through this spaceship set while actors in alien costumes try to eliminate them, and the whole thing ends with a recreation of the power loader fight from Aliens." "That sounds awesome," replied Sarah Kim, the event coordinator. "We could even add some psychological horror elements, maybe some mind control scenarios. People love feeling like they're fighting back against impossible odds." "Exactly. And we make it interactive so visitors have to actually solve puzzles and work together to survive. Nothing gets people's adrenaline pumping like thinking they're about to be abducted by hostile extraterrestrials." The committee spent another hour enthusiastically planning elaborate scenarios designed to terrorize paying customers, who would voluntarily subject themselves to simulated alien attacks for entertainment. They discussed optimal scare tactics, costume design for maximum intimidation effect, and how to create the most realistic, life-or-death scenarios possible. In the Galactic Council's threat assessment files, this conversation would have been classified as human paramilitary training exercises and preparation for anti-alien, guerrilla warfare operations. Meanwhile, at Blockbuster Video, yes, this was a while ago, teenage employee Marcus Williams was having an in-depth discussion with a customer about the relative merits of different horror franchises. See, the thing about the Friday the 13th series, Marcus explained while restocking the horror section, is that Jason represents the unstoppable force, right? But what makes it interesting is watching how each group of victims adapts their survival strategies based on what they've learned from previous encounters. Customer Dave Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, and by the later sequels, the characters are way more tactically aware. They set better traps, they coordinate their responses, they've learned from past mistakes. Exactly. It's like watching human tactical evolution in real time. Each generation gets better at dealing with the threat. Plus, the final girls always get more resourceful as the series progresses. Tommy Jarvis doesn't just survive Jason, he actively hunts him down using psychological warfare and improvised weapons. To alien observers, this would have sounded like a strategic analysis of long-term conflict adaptation and the development of human anti-supernatural combat doctrine across multiple generations. Over in suburban Detroit, the Martinez family was having their weekly movie night, a tradition that would have horrified the Galactic Council beyond all rational thought. They'd democratically selected The Thing for their family bonding experience, complete with homemade popcorn and enthusiastic commentary. "Dad, why don't they just torch the whole base from orbit?" asked 12-year-old Tommy Martinez during the film's climax. "Because, son," replied his father Miguel, "sometimes you have to get close and dirty to make sure the threat is completely eliminated." Notice how McCready uses psychological tactics to identify the infected crew members before taking direct action. "Ooh, and look how he improvised weapons from lab equipment," added Tommy's sister Rosa. "Humans are really good at turning random stuff into dangerous things when we need to." Their mother Carmen nodded approvingly. "It's all about adaptability and keeping calm under pressure. That's what separates us from species that just panic and run." The family spent the rest of the evening discussing optimal survival strategies for various horror movie scenarios, rating different protagonists' tactical decisions, and debating whether they personally could survive encounters with different types of movie monsters. It was a perfectly normal family activity that would have been interpreted by alien intelligence as multi-generational combat training and indoctrination of human juveniles in anti-monster warfare protocols. Later that night, as the Martinez family peacefully slept in their suburban home, completely unaware that they'd been classified as part of the most dangerous species in the galaxy, emergency broadcasts were being transmitted across 47 different star systems, warning all civilian and military vessels to maintain maximum distance from the Sol system. The humans, meanwhile, were dreaming normal human dreams about things like upcoming dentist appointments, whether they'd remembered to turn off the coffee maker, and that recurring nightmare about showing up to work in their underwear. Not a single one of them was dreaming about conquering the galaxy or developing new methods of interstellar intimidation, which somehow made them even more terrifying to the species that were now convinced humanity was playing a very long and very sophisticated psychological warfare game. 15 years later, the day that would forever be remembered as the Great Surrender of 2387 began like any other Tuesday for Captain Rebecca Torres of the UES Endeavour, humanity's first faster-than-light exploration vessel. "Initiating first contact protocols," announced her communications officer, Lieutenant Park, as they approached the Kepler 442 system, broadcasting standard friendship and peace messages in 17 different mathematical languages. Captain Torres adjusted her coffee mug, which bore the cheerful slogan, "World's Okayest Space Captain," and featured a cartooned alien giving a thumbs up. She had no idea that similar images had been circulating through galactic intelligence networks for over a decade, as evidence of humanity's psychological warfare capabilities and their disturbing tendency to anthropomorphize potential threats. "Any response yet?" she asked, reviewing the routine first contact checklist that included such innocent items as exchange cultural information and establish trade relations, both of which had been flagged by alien analysts as probable covers for reconnaissance and resource acquisition operations. "Actually, yes, ma'am," Lieutenant Park replied, looking puzzled at his console. "I'm getting multiple responses, but they're all surrendering." "Surrendering? To what?" "To us, apparently. The first message just came through. It says, and I quote, 'Please don't hurt us. We taste terrible, and our planet has very little strategic value.'" Captain Torres nearly choked on her coffee. "Run that by me again?" Before Lieutenant Park could respond, the ship's main view screen flickered to life, revealing what appeared to be a very nervous alien delegation. The lead figure, who looked like a cross between a jellyfish and an anxiety attack, was holding what appeared to be a white flag made from what might have been a pillowcase. Greetings, terrifying human overlords, the alien began, his voice trembling through the universal translator. I am Supreme Commander Zephyros of the Galactic Council, and on behalf of 47 allied species, I formally surrender to your obviously superior civilization. Captain Torres looked around her bridge at her equally confused crew. Excuse me, Commander Zephyros, but I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. We're here for peaceful first contact and cultural exchange. The alien delegation immediately began what appeared to be a collective panic attack. Commander Zephyros started hyperventilating into a paper bag, while another alien, who resembled a nervous tree, began speaking rapidly. Please, merciful human warriors, we understand that peaceful cultural exchange is probably a euphemism for efficient resource extraction, or tactical reconnaissance before subjugation. We've studied your historical documentaries extensively. We know what your species is capable of. Historical documentaries? Captain Torres asked, genuine confusion evident in her voice. Dr. Quill stepped forward, still twitching after all these years, carrying what appeared to be an enormous filing system. We have detailed records of your species' encounters with extraterrestrial threats, supernatural entities, undead plagues, and various forms of hostile wildlife. Your tactical adaptability and survival capabilities are impressive. I'm sorry, could you be more specific about these historical records? Zephyros, having recovered enough to speak, activated a holographic display showing scenes from Aliens, The Thing, Independence Day, and Predator. These chronicles of human-alien encounters demonstrate your species' standard first contact protocols, immediate threat assessment, tactical adaptation, and systematic elimination of hostile forces using improvised weapons and psychological warfare. Captain Torres stared at the screen in growing amazement. Commander Zephyros, those aren't historical documentaries, those are movies. Entertainment. Fiction. Make-believe stories for fun. The silence that followed this statement was so profound it seemed to bend space-time around it. Fiction, Zephyros whispered, as if the word physically pained him. Entertainment, added Dr. Quill, his compound eyes spinning wildly. For fun? General Ironbark's leaves rustled, with what might have been the sound of a world-view crumbling. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, the ship's xenosociologist, chose that moment to make things infinitely worse by trying to be helpful. Oh yes, horror movies are incredibly popular on Earth. People love watching them. We have whole festivals dedicated to celebrating the most creative and terrifying scenarios. There's nothing quite like the adrenaline rush of a good scare. The alien delegation collectively fainted. While Dr. Quill was being revived with what appeared to be alien smelling salts, Captain Torres tried to explain. Look, we make these stories up because we enjoy being scared in a safe environment. It's like a roller coaster for your emotions. We know it's not real, that's what makes it fun. Zephyros, now a concerning shade of green, slowly stood up. You're telling me that your species voluntarily exposes itself to terrifying scenarios for pleasure? Well, yes. We also have haunted houses, horror novels, scary video games. You've weaponized fear as a recreational activity. I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds kind of... Do you have any idea? Zephyros interrupted, his voice rising to a pitch that probably violated several noise ordinances. How many sleepless cycles I've spent wondering what kind of hellish military training could produce a species capable of eliminating supernatural threats with improvised weapons and witty one-liners? Captain Torres opened her mouth to respond, but Zephyros was on a roll now. I reorganized our entire military doctrine around the assumption that humans were apex predators, who had evolved past the need for conventional weapons. I classified your planet as a Class X death world. I convinced the entire Galactic Council that first contact with humanity would result in our immediate and creative destruction. Well, Captain Torres said weakly, on the bright side, you're not wrong about the creative destruction part. Have you seen what we did to our own planet's climate? This was apparently not the reassuring response Zephyros had been hoping for. Furthermore, Dr. Quill added, consulting his massive files, our research indicated that human juveniles are indoctrinated in anti-monster warfare tactics from an early age. Are you telling me that monster-under-the-bed scenarios are not actually combat preparedness training? Huh. Those are just childhood fears. We tell kids stories to help them cope with being afraid of the dark. So you psychologically condition your young to overcome fear responses through exposure to imaginary threats? Yes, I suppose that's technically accurate. The alien delegation spent several minutes in what appeared to be a group therapy session, complete with supportive tentacle holding and reassuring leaf rustling. Finally, Ambassador Thornwick emerged from his shell and spoke in a small, defeated voice. "Commander Zephyros, do you realize what this means? That I'm going to spend the rest of my career being remembered as the intelligence officer who classified an entire species based on their entertainment preferences?" "No," Thornwick said sadly. "It means that humans are so naturally terrifying that they don't even realize they're terrifying. They've created an entire entertainment industry around scenarios that would cause most species to evacuate their planets, and they think it's normal." Captain Torres looked around at her crew, who were trying very hard not to laugh. "Look, I can see how there might have been some confusion, but we really are here for peaceful contact. We're explorers, not conquerors." "That's exactly what a terrifyingly competent species would say," General Ironbark muttered. And so, the greatest first contact misunderstanding in galactic history was resolved with humanity accidentally confirming their reputation as the most psychologically resilient species in the galaxy, simply by explaining that they enjoyed being scared, for fun. The Galactic Council eventually lifted the quarantine on Earth, but maintained a respectful distance from any species that considered alien invasion a valid theme for children's birthday parties. As for Commander Zephyros, he was indeed promoted, and now serves as the galaxy's leading expert on human recreational psychological warfare, a position that mostly involves watching horror movies and taking detailed notes on human tactical responses to impossible situations. He's actually gotten quite good at predicting plot twists, though he still jumps at the scary parts. Some things never change.